Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I often read meditations over here, like almost every day or every other day. And I have two meditations today. One is from Linda Picone's book, The Daily Book of Positive Quotations, and the other one is from The Language of Letting Go, which is my favorite meditation book, but I haven't read from this on here in a while, and neither one of these meditations have I read today. I do know that this one in here is kind of about grieving, so I thought, since that's something I'm going through right now, how very apropos. But it was interesting because we've been kind of busy this afternoon, and I was like thinking about what I wanted to do my Peterisms video about, and I was going through the meditation books, and I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, today's date, June 2nd, and I was like, today is my mom's sobriety birthday. And had my mother stayed alive, and had she stayed sober and stayed alive, she would have had 24 years sober today, which is crazy to me, you know. So I got sober, my sobriety birthday is December 17th of 1994. I have been sober 24 and a half years, and well, almost 24 and a half years, we don't borrow time. And my mother passed away just short of 13 years sober. And in fact, I met her sponsor. I had never met her sponsor before. We kept our programs very separate from each other. But I met her sponsor at her funeral, and her sponsor gave me her 13-year coin and said, I thought maybe you'd want to bury her with it or just have it. And I said, no. I said, my mother was kind of a stickler, you know, for the fact that we don't borrow time. And what that means is, like, in the program, we don't borrow time. So if you have, you know, let's say 29 days, you don't say you have 30 days. Like, you don't say tomorrow I'll have 30 days, because we don't know. We might not make it till tomorrow sober. So she died, my mother died a month short of having 13 years sober. But had she stayed alive, and here I am borrowing time for her, but had she stayed alive and had she stayed sober, she would have had 24 years sober today. And, you know, it's crazy to me when I think about how much our lives change as a result of she and I both being sober together. I think that as family members, it is the greatest gift that we can give one another. I didn't even really, until just a few years ago, understand the depth of which I had affected those people around me by my addiction. You know, especially with my father, I didn't, who is, like, you know, such an enabler to my behavior. But when I read Beautiful Boy a couple years ago, like, I've shared this on here, but I called my dad and I said, have you read this book? And he said, oh yeah, I read it when it first came out. And I said, you know, is that how it was? And he goes, that's exactly how it was. And, you know, they say that for every alcoholic addict, there's 5 to 10 people that we affect directly in our lives. And I think that it has to be so many more than that, right? Depending on how many people we interact with. And I think about that, you know, I think about the fact that from the time that my mother got sober, we had a completely different relationship, you know? We spoke the language of sobriety. We spoke the language of recovery. And so, you know, I could say something to her and she'd say, yeah, exactly, right? And then she didn't have to worry about me anymore, and I didn't have to worry about her, at least on that level, that she would make it home safely. You know, these fears that I had of my mother, was she gonna be drunk and trip over a table and kill herself falling on the floor? Or, you know, would she fall down the stairs? Or would she leave a cigarette burning late at night? Or would she not make it home? Those things. And similar fears that she probably had for me, you know. We didn't have to have those fears anymore. And I think that kind of took the relationship to a new level. I think there was also newfound respect. And for once in my life, in some aspects, because my mother was a very fearful person, I was able to be the son and she was able to be the mother. Something that hadn't happened really as far as caretaking, you know, in a long time. Because it was always me having to, you know, take care of my mother before that. But for the first time in my life, I was able to actually have a mother, and it was really, really nice, you know. So if you're out there and you're struggling, do it for your kids, do it for your parents. If that is what will get you through the door, you know, there's like the saying that people always say, well, nobody will get clean and sober unless they really want to. I know a lot of people that are that want to get clean and sober and they can't still, and they want to. You know, I know a lot of people that have a lot of stuff hanging over their heads, you know, legal stuff and losing jobs, losing marriages, losing relationships, losing places to stay, and they still can't stop, right? So that's not enough sometimes, but I think to look at our family members and realize maybe not what we're going to lose, but what we could have as a result of that, you know, is another way to look at it. And, you know, being that it is my mother's sobriety birthday today, I just feel so blessed that I was able to have that time with her that I wouldn't have had otherwise, you know. And I look back on the end of her life, and some of the most fun times, the most hilarious times happened as a result of our sobriety, you know. And I just really, sobriety is the greatest gift I've ever been given in my entire life. I could get real emotional today, but I'm trying. I've been so emotional the last couple days. I need to hold it in a little bit for my own, you know, well-being. But you know, recovery is the greatest gift that I've ever been given. Sobriety is the greatest gift I've ever been given. I think one of a close second would be my mother's sobriety and the fact that it allowed me to have this family that I'd always yearned for. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there today. The other thing I want to say, and I think this is important, is that my mother got sober at 51 years old. You know, I think often we think, well, I'm too old, or, you know, whatever. I was 22 and a half when I got sober. My mother was 51. You know, I think that you can get sober at any age. I know people that are 70 that are getting sober. I know people that are much younger that are getting sober. You know, there are people that get sober all the time. I have friends of mine that got sober at like 15, 16. So, you know, I sometimes feel like I wish I had gotten sober that early because there is so much life that I missed out on because I didn't, you know. But I am also a believer that the journey happened the way that it was supposed to happen for me. So if you're somebody that's older and you're like, what's the point at this point? My mother was 51 years old, and I want that to be maybe some motivation for somebody out there. All right, so let's read these meditations. Probably not going to get to both of them today. The first one from June 2nd in the Daily Book of Positive Quotations is Silence and Strength. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may silence make you strong. Chief Dan George. Often, our first instinct when we're feeling sad is to fill up the empty space around us with people, noise, and activity. Get out and see other people, our friends tell us. Keep busy. This is so interesting because this is very much along the same lines as my meditation yesterday where people would tell me, you need to move on, you need to move on, you need to move on. And my friend said to me, we don't move on, we move through. And we carry the remnants and the memory of that person with us. Get out and see other people, our friends tell us. Keep busy. But it can be very healing to allow ourselves to feel our sadness fully, in silence and alone, particularly if we look for our solace in nature. Being in the natural world reminds us that everything, including sadness, eventually passes. When I am sad, I will sit quietly and experience my feelings. By letting myself be sad for a while, I prepare myself to move beyond sadness. You know, I don't know if it's so much about the fact that sadness will move on at some point and that it won't be with us, or if it's that we need to recognize that sadness is an okay emotion, you know? And I think that that is something that I struggled with for a really big part of my life, was that I would have, you know, a lot of role models that, and not necessarily my close family, because my close family was somebody that was very in tune with their emotions and allowed me to feel that. But I think in the outside world, you know, of what strength looks like to other people, strength looks like not breaking down, whatever. Well, sometimes to me, weakness looks like strength. Being able to admit your weaknesses, to admit your faults, to admit that you screw up, to admit that you're sad, to admit that you're really struggling and that you're having a hard time, you know? I think sometimes that is one of the greatest strengths that we can have, is awareness and identifying that and allowing ourselves to feel that. When talking about grief, one of the things I say, and I don't, to be honest with you, I have no clue where this came to me. But I tell people that take the time that you need and allow yourself to feel sad. I always say that, allow yourself to feel sad. With every person that I know that's passed, but especially with my mother, when I would have like a day that I just would feel it, like all around me. Like, you know, I would hear a song and it would just throw me into tears. I would literally pull over on the side of the road and I would allow myself to just kind of feel sad. There were days that I would play movies that like I knew would make me just bawl my eyes out. I used to watch, you know, Out of Africa and To Kill a Mockingbird and My Dog Skip and on and on and on. All these movies that my mother and I loved together, you know, and I would listen to soundtracks of movies that she loved and just allow myself. The Color Purple was huge. You know, that we would listen to the soundtrack and watch the movie together and just really allow, oh my God, The Way We Were. I mean, she loved that, you know, and I can't still hear that Barbra Streisand song without losing it. But what I realized was it was okay to sit in that moment and allow myself to really, really be sad, you know, and it was cathartic for me to sit there and just feel it, to allow my body, my mind, my spirit to just feel all of the feelings that I needed to feel. and then be able to go on with my day if I needed to. And that didn't mean that if a half an hour later I needed to take some time and feel it again, I would. But I think what happened over time was that maybe I didn't move through grief, maybe grief moved through me, I don't know, you know, and that it kind of moved from here to here to here to here, where at the beginning I felt it all the time, and then I was numb for a long time, and then I didn't know how to feel, and then I allowed myself to start feeling, and then I would pull over on this side of the road. It just was crazy, you know? But once I allowed myself to not be afraid, you know, of it anymore, and allowed myself to cry and bawl and be angry and be mad and that I had lost my mom, and, you know, have all of these what seemed like irrational emotions that weren't irrational at all, they were human, and feelings aren't facts, you know? And when I was able to feel these feelings and allow myself to have them, the feelings at some point didn't feel as strong over time, you know? It's like they started here, they started here, they started here. I still cry from time to time when I hear a song come on the radio like The Way We Were, but not as much as I used to. Do I still have days where I cry as much as I was telling a friend of mine this the other night. Yeah, it's like, you know, there are some days where it feels like it was just yesterday, and there are other days that it feels like it was 30 years ago that I lost my mom. And it'll probably be like that for the rest of my life. But I think it's important, whatever emotion you're going through, sadness doesn't have to just be to grief of losing somebody to death. It can be a breakup. It can be just, I'm sad because I don't feel like I have a lot of people in my life, or I'm sad because I'm lonely, or I'm sad because of some situation that happened, or whatever. You know, sadness can be, I don't like my job. It can be whatever, you know? I think one of the biggest things, and we don't talk about this as much as we really need to, is loss of pets, you know? I think the loss of pets is one of the greatest grieving griefs, one of the greatest grieving situations I've ever witnessed from people, you know? And yet we don't talk a lot about it. I don't think we really know how to talk a lot about it. And I think it's, you know, dogs, cats, birds, whatever, they love us unconditionally, you know? And they depend upon us. We come in the door and they depend upon us, and they love to snuggle next to us, and, you know, our life is their life, and yet we don't talk enough about that, and I think we need to talk more about that, you know? And I think it's one of the biggest mysteries of life that we don't talk about, is how to get over or get through you losing your pet. Well, you're not going to get over it. You're just not, you know? And I think it's about, just like anything else, allowing yourself to really feel the pain, and allowing yourself just to really sit in it. And I think feeling the pain means acknowledging how much that person, that dog, that cat, whatever, that bird meant to you, and what your life is going to look like now without them, and how you want to go on and pay them honor in your life as well. So, you know, but I am a believer that this too shall pass, and that the way I feel today is not going to be the way that I feel 5 years from now. And the thing is this, okay, and I know this is going to sound very bizarre, but some days I miss that I was that sad then and I'm not that sad now. Because life does go on, and you do change how you feel over time, and feelings aren't facts, because how I feel today is not going to be how I feel 5 years from now. And some days I miss that I felt that strongly about something, because what's sad about that is it makes me realize that time does tick on, and people are left in the past, and our lives go on, and that's sad. But I don't want to stay stuck just to remember somebody that has passed, because they wouldn't want that for me. They wouldn't. They would want me to live my best life. I know that. If my mother was sitting here right now, she would say, sweetheart, I had my great life. You go live your best life too. So anyway, I hope that meditation helped you guys. I'm not going to read the other one. I'll save it for another day. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.